not here, but he is our secretary. Thank you all for coming. We have these meetings at least once a month. We have, I'm sure you're all on the mailing list for the Facebook group. We have a meeting next month at a happy hour. Yeah, first I'd like to start off, since we have a lot of new faces, we're going to go around, just introduce yourself, say who you are, just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just go around the room. Yeah, then if you are not a member of the DeKalb Young Republicans, I have membership forms. I know some people have submitted membership forms about you to pay your dues. If you need to do that, David Reed is the person to talk to. If you need membership forms, please state so as you're introducing yourself, and I will be glad to give you one. But without further ado, I'm Alex, and I introduce myself. I'm an attorney in Dunwoody. I've been involved in the Young Republicans for a number of years. Jeffrey, do you want to tell us?
My name is Jeffrey Meeks.
Hi, Jeff.
We came from Plymouth County out in Conyers and Rockdale. They've been new. I've lived in DeKalb. I've lived in Gwinnett, so this area is pretty much me. Gwinnett, DeKalb, Rockdale, and all of it. So I get so involved in all of it. My family's been in Atlanta for 4 generations, starting plumbing, and I've been plumbing all the way through. I've seen everybody.
I'm Debbie Ingram. I'm raised white, and I enjoy listening to the Young Republicans, even though they won't let me join. But I'm here for Chris tonight, guest speaker.
I'm David Reed. I'm the vice chair, treasurer of the DeKalb Republicans. Been involved with the club for a couple years. Let's see.
Mel Williamson, DeKalb Republican member. To actually clarify that, this young lady is incorrect. You can be a member, it's not a voting. So we'll gladly accept the check. As you can tell, I'm the finance director. Very much looking forward to hear Mr. Vaughn speak this evening.
My name's Jamie Manady. The last name's really hard to say, but it's fun to say. I've been sitting on the science of the state for the last 4 years. Worked as software engineer every day.
And he's recently married.
Yes, introduction.
I'm now Cecile. I'm 24 years old now. Also recently married. I recently immigrated to the U.S. So let's join the DeKalb Young Republicans. Where are you from? Holland. Holland. Welcome.
I'm Jonathan Scott. I'm Chris's campaign manager, and I'm from Hnak County. I'm young enough to be a young Republican, just for a record. Not in DeKalb, though.
You don't need to live in DeKalb. You can live anywhere.
All right.
So Shane Carlton recently moved here from Northern Virginia about 8 months ago, and just looking to get involved.
Joel Guerra. I'm a photographer with the Georgia Department of Transportation. Me and my wife moved from Miami about 1.5 years ago to DeKalb County, so we're just now getting involved in everything too.
I'm Stephanie Guerra. I want to point out we're not from Miami though. We're only living there about 1 year. I'm from Atlanta and Joel's from Carolina. And yeah, this is my first meeting with you. Joel's come wanted to. So let's be here.
My name is Mark Augustine. I live in DeKalb County, about 5 minutes away. I own a small marketing and promotions company called Hnak Presents. I love Alex. I am an associate member of the DeKalb Young Republicans at 43. I'm not allowed to vote, but I love being at these events, so that's it.
John Coleman. I'm a title attorney, and I've got a 4-month-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm a life member of the DeKalb Young Republicans, and a proud member of that, and that's it.
I'm Will Frisch. I live in Stone Mountain, and I suppose I should get one of those forms too. So I suppose I should get one of those forms too.
Alright, I'm CJ Lester. I'm the chairman of the Rockdale Young Republicans, and I'd like to invite everybody here to come to our next meeting, which is May 8th at Glenn's Barbecue. So I'd like to see everybody there. Thank you.
And last is going to be our speaker, Chris Vaughn. Just so you all know, he's running for the 4th Congressional District. He is trying to turn it back to be a Democratic district, which is a long time coming. Don't know much about Chris. He probably has much more to say. So, Chris Vaughn, our speaker for today.
I didn't know where we were going to meet, so I actually have some literature. So if you want the paperwork, you can have it. I mean, we'll pass it out. I don't want to do it right now. That's kind of awkward. I'm Chris Vaughn. I am too old to be a Republican voting member, although I was very involved right outside of Charlotte, Gaston County Young Republicans back in the blessed 90s when I was younger and we ruled the earth and I was on talk radio. Now I'm just older and got kids. 46 years old, Thursday is actually my birthday. Never been in political office before. I had an epiphany one night when I was looking at the new drawing of the district. I don't know how y'all feel, as I was talking to John, there's something about having kids that changes your perspective eternally, especially about how the legacy that you leave. I've got a 21, an 18, and a 13. There's a statistic out last week that says 50% of all college graduates, 2011, 2012, will not get a job in their field of study, or if they do get a job, will be so underemployed financially they will have to get a second job to pay for their life and pay off their student loans and debts. I think about that because of my kids. I think the greatest problem we have right now is we need jobs and we need economy and we need to quit spending. That thing is, some people say that. I don't know what our fear is about just trying to limit the role of government. Lifelong Republican. I always say this and I always throw this out, and I'm not saying this here to piss up, it's just part of who I am. If you search it, you can find it in my past. I don't really have a bad past. I've only got 2 tickets my entire life, and they were speed traps, let me just say. They legitimately were, in my opinion. One was in Pennsylvania, so that was Yankee country, and I had a Georgia tag, so there was no speed limit sign. But anyway, back in the 90s, I taught myself in the talk radio. And that was because there was no real conservative voice in that area. This is West Charlotte. And this is before Rush was a huge name, and nobody had ever heard of Sean Hannity, and nobody had ever heard of anybody. No Bortz was a nobody in Charlotte. And to make a statement against a weenie Republican county commissioner, I ran as a Libertarian candidate, and that's the way I got on the ballot. There's certain values I hold dear. I said this, I think it's great that we all have great aspirations to help other people, but it's not my right or my privilege to take your money and do what I think is right with it. That's your right and your privilege. That is the Constitution that we live under. That is the law that we live under. My job is I pastor a church. Some people think that is a whole different thing, but I do believe it gives me an asset in the 4th district, because the 4th district is a heavily Democratic district, heavily minority district, and it's done in position that way because of the Voting Rights Act. But I can speak to certain social issues. I can also address certain demographics on that level and do it in such a way so that hopefully say the harsh thing in the nice way so that you can change the hearts of people. I'm kind of shocked sometimes with some of the some people that I'm around now. To me, you have to engage everybody. I think the Republican Party, I've always said it's had 3 major sins in my life. We've not embraced enough diversity, we've not embraced the minority, and we're too afraid of any change. And you have to embrace that. You still have to fight. And politics is a daily battle. It's just like life. It's a daily battle for an inch and an inch and an inch, and not walking away when you don't get everything you want. But that's why I'm running to help my children. I'm running to help your children. I had an epiphany, and I don't like being too what I call pseudo-spiritual with it, but I feel called to do it. I've never ran for office. I've been shocked, though, at the turnout of support from people that I had never met 6 months ago that all of a sudden are either giving me their life and or money and or both to run for Congress. I have a certain set of principles set, and I promise you it's not going to change just for this. It is God, it is my wife, it is my kids, it is my church, and it is everything else. and I applaud the county commissioner I met the other day, and we were talking. He said, I'm only going to run one term because I got 2 small kids. I said, I'm sorry. I'm only going to run one term. He said, right now they're small. He said, I can run for county commissioner or something else in 10, 15 years. He said, life's too short, and I don't want to miss T-ball. My kids are older now, and I'm at that point of life where I'm looking at it from their side. My 18-year-old daughter one day looked at me, and we were talking about Congress and money, and I said, well, you know why I'm running? She goes, why? Because you owe $50,000 right now. And she's the tight child of mine. She's the one who doesn't owe anybody and always has a couple grand in her savings account. She's very frugal, 18 years old. And she doesn't have a job. That's what's funny. I'm requiring her not to work while she's in college so she can give her life to that. Not that I'm against it. This summer, she's got to get a job. Everybody understand? Okay. So she looked at me and I said, well, the reason I'm doing this, baby, I said, you owe $50,000 right now. And she got real pissy because I don't owe nobody. I said, oh no, you do. I said, you owe 50 grand. I said, your brother owes 50 grand at 13, your sister owes 50 grand at 21, your mom owes 50 grand at her age, and I owe 50 grand at 46. And she goes, well, that's not fair. And I said, baby, I said, I'm going to tell you my lifelong story. I said, life's not fair. It's just life. And I said, unfortunately, I said, things have to change. I asked for your vote on July 31st. I asked for your vote on November 6th. If you want to know something about me, I'm almost out of business cards. I've got like 5, but I have other things I can pass out. If you want to ask me where I stand. And I'm real blunt with this. This is one of my calling cards, one of my traits. First thing I would do, me and my wife, we made the decision to run to do this, run for Congress. So we created the Twitter, created the Facebook, created some of the things just basic to start. Had not announced to anybody. And I put a hashtag on the campaign Twitter, which I haven't even promoted, but it's funny. And I had a lady at church find the hashtag, do a search, and she found me. And then sent me a private text message and put, basically, what the blank are you doing? And I said, I'm going to run for Congress. And then she actually put right back. She said, you'll do terrible. And I said, why? She said, you're just too dang honest. She said, you didn't fudge it, you didn't do it. I make this joke, but it's true. I'm not going to go to hell for lying. I can watch a thief, and I don't like a thief, but I hate a liar. Because don't tell me you're going to do something and then don't do it. I don't mind somebody who comes back to the table and tells me they couldn't do it. I don't mind that, but at least be honorable and don't two-face out. My priority structure is very strict with certain things. And I believe sometimes we have lost our way in America because we've not held strict to a value set that promotes the liberties that we hold. If you have any questions, I'm glad to take questions. Somebody asked me one day, they said, what are your 3 planks? I said, it's money, it's economy, and it's jobs. And knowing I'm a minister, they said, well, what about social? I said, well, I'm very social. I said, I would be considered a social conservative. I said, but I'm sorry. I said, right now, it is money, it is economy, and it is jobs. Because I've sat in the office too many times with people who do not have a job and do not have money, so therefore they're making very bad social decisions. And one of the greatest things you can do to help somebody is make sure that you have a strong economy with strong jobs. And I don't know about y'all, again, I look at my daughter. I want my daughter not to have to work 3 jobs to pay off the 1 student loan she has at this point, which I've guaranteed her I will pay for it because that was my agreement. But I don't want her to have to work 3 jobs just to try to make 1 salary and live. I had a guy walk in my yard. He was, I don't know what they call the guys, you would, but they shoot the lines to do the wiring, the plumbing, the gas, and we're talking, and he was something with that. But he wasn't he was with that, but he wasn't that. He was something, but he was overseeing it. And we were talking about the economy. He saw my yard sign, and we were talking about, and I said something about, the economy. He said, well, he goes, I make about 50 grand a year right now. And he goes, I'm thankful. And I said, well, I didn't know. He said, but, because I used to make 120 grand a year. He said, he goes, I do this, I do another job. My wife works 2 jobs. He says, that's the problem. And that's the problem that our nation is in. When you have a high level of debt. It's real funny, I just heard this today. George Washington, his entire life, lived in debt. And because the burden of debt was so strong, later in his life, he always espoused to everybody and to the federal government, let's not live in debt, so that we do not have to have a harsh taskmaster. Live frugal, pay for it as you go, and don't get caught up in it. Which is funny because some of y'all are younger than me, and I don't know about y'all. When I was in my 20s, it's real nice having plastic, and you charge it, and you go have it. It's real aggravating for the next 5 years paying for the VCR that broke 2 years earlier, but you're still paying $30. That's where our nation is. And my prayer, my hope, my dream is to win the fourth, which I tremendously believe is possible in 2020. I personally believe the stars have lined up to change the fourth district immensely. In the minority sections, there's a lot of disillusionment with the party, the Democratic Party, and a lot of heartfelt change, and actually wondering is what we bought. There's actually a great rant by John Lovitz, we were talking about it right now, lifelong Democrat, a guy who used to be on Saturday Night Live, who just voted last 2008 for Obama, but is now very disillusioned because all his money that he's worked so hard is being taxed at a higher rate, and now he's the mean guy in the 1%. There's a strong disillusion. I ask for your support to help change those hearts. Two, the values that we have held dear and the values that have a strong economy, which are very basic. You spend less, you save some, and you don't tax people to death. Anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
Everyone talks about the fourth, and the Democrats have the majority.
It's about 60-40,
yeah.
58.
Obviously, you were at the county convention, or the district convention, right? And like many of us here, you saw the differences our own party has.
Yep.
What would you say about what we need to do to overcome that before we can go on to take challenge the Democrats?
Well, see, here's what's funny to me. In my 20s, I don't know how old I am, my early 20s, this is 88, so I'm 22. 88's the year Pat Robinson, went for I was on staff at the church, the pastor was big into that, so I went to the county convention, whether you like Ralph Reed or not, Ralph Reed is a strategic grassroots genius when it comes to political parties. Some people don't like him because of the Christian Coalition and all that, or whatever, and Abramoff and all that. But when it comes to grassroots, he's a genius. The guys who were on the field in that kind of convention ruled it. Not the party, they did. And the slate that they wanted in got in, and it was so funny. I still remember the county commissioner chair getting up, and he goes, people, this is probably to 300 church people. He goes, let's be Christian about this. Well, what's funny was the angst and the animosity had been from the party members, not the people in the crowd. The bad thing was after 88, at any other event I ever went to, those people were never there. And that's the part about it. To me, that's life. Politics is an inch game. It's not everything. And it's making sure, and I don't even know who it was, somebody at that day, they asked me, they said, what did I think about it? And I got my own opinion of the delegate list and all, and somebody asked me, I'm running for Congress. I was like, heck no. I said, I'm not worthy to be there. I said, I'm sorry. Take me back to Charlotte. I put my time in there. I spent in Atlanta and Georgia. I used to travel a lot. My kids were small. I was involved. I'm going to make no apologies about it. I wasn't because of my kids. That's my priority structure. But you have to stay involved. And then you also have to work through the differences. When I did talk radio, here's the part that always recording this. It always irritated me with my Republican friends on radio. Light would go on with my Democrat friends. We're making fun of each other's mama, your dog, your sister, your college. We're brutal. Light would go off, we'd go eat lunch. Sometimes with my own party friends, the lights would go on. We would agree, and I would disagree on one point that they didn't like. I had one friend, actually we had no 7-second delay at this station. I had one friend, minister, cuss me out on the air. Now, I knew who he was, I knew the voice. He said, you're just not even my friend. And later I asked him, I said, why? I said, we disagree on one point. He said, well, I just can't even work with you if you're like that. Which I like Ed Koch, I always like his quote. And I've added to it a little bit. If you agree with me 6 out of 12 things, we can work together. 9 out of 12, we're probably best friends. But if we're 12 out of 12 you agree with, you belong in a mental institution. Because my wife doesn't agree with me 12 out of 12. And to me, that's the part that gets into commitment and fighting. And I am a pastor. I look at a lot of things through that church lens. It's always funny to me the people who say they're committed and love it and want to be there. And they never show up. And I'm real funny with that. I even looked at somebody, and I'm serious about this. It's why I'm pastor my church. Somebody who comes every 5th Sunday, doesn't work, doesn't give, doesn't do, I don't care what they say. I'm just going to be honest. I don't. They don't do anything. But the family puts in the time, they give their money, they give their life, they work in classes, they do things. I'll listen to them. And to me, that's the other side. Because you're never going to win somebody to quit, especially whenever there's that little risk. And most of the time, on both sides, my opinion on that day of the 4th, there's both sides There's a little bit of misunderstanding on both sides, a little bit of fear on both sides. My opinion, you're recording. You may take this from me, I may take that from you, and there's that whole fear. You know, politics is a game of power. You have to stay committed. You have to stay committed to the battles, and you have to stay committed to the fight. And unfortunately, most people don't. They will not espouse that. So that's the only thing I can say. And somebody looked at me that Saturday, and that was the whole conversation about should I run for, should I be a delegate? I said no. I said there's no way. I said if I win Congress, which I will, positive prediction. I said I would refuse to be a delegate at the next one. I said if I win 2 terms, I would refuse. I said there's other people who put in the time. And I said I'm sorry. I said that's just kind of the church culture coming. People who put in the time and have been faithful, they deserve a level of honor and respect. And I know sometimes that doesn't come across that way. But you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. It just gets down to that level of respect and time. So, I don't know if that's what the answer you want. So.
You mentioned here one of the things that's very important to you is money.
Or not spending it.
What's your position on the Federal Reserve with regards to, I suppose maybe a two-part question. How do you think the Federal Reserve has affected America and the economy for the last 100 years? And what's your position on the Federal Reserve going forward?
I'm not pandering. I mean, you can ask him. I'm not. I know you're a Ron Paul supporter, and I know Ron Paul, one of his major planks for elimination of the Federal Reserve, which I totally agree with. The biggest part that frustrates me with the Federal Reserve is the secrecy of it, if that makes sense. I mean, we're supposed to have open government and transparency, and the Federal Reserve can dictate change. I don't think it's a positive, at the moment. Inflation's so high. Inflation's higher right now. Gas prices right now are not as high due to drilling, which that could help, but it's due to inflation. There's just been printed too much money. That's done by the Federal Reserve. I actually have 2 $1 bills at home. I've kept them saved. I worked at a tuxedo shop. Somebody paid me with this. I don't know why you would, but they were silver certificates. And I've saved them because they just are so freakingly weird, and they got this blue ink, but it's from the 1940s, if I remember right, and I don't know why they did. And I like to keep them. And I've often thought about carrying them because you could remind people this is back when this dollar represented 1 ounce of silver, or $1 of silver. And this dollar represents the U.S. government. Thank God at least the monetary value still does have some respect in the world, but not as much as they do. I would go for eliminating the thing. Saying that actually scares some people because most people are just afraid of change. But I do agree with you. I think the Federal Reserve's not been positive. Anytime there's tragedy, that's the moment when all of a sudden we need to have greater regulations, and everything tightened. No matter what kind of, is that mine?
I can get you something.
Diet Coke.
Diet Coke.
And that's on tape. Okay. But I believe that the Fed should be highly scrutinized. I do not like the fact that it's considered, in my opinion, like an autonomous entity apart from, although they get, sometimes I think it's a dog and pony show. They go up to the House and the Senate and, they do hearings, but it's a little bit of a dog and pony. So I don't like that. I would love to go back to a gold standard. The scary part about that is if you study history for England, Churchill put England back on a gold standard. Created terrible inflation, terrible financial problems. Because it's like putting a car, it's like pulling the brakes on a car and you're going 60 miles an hour. You can do it, but you better be ready for the ride or the stop as you do it. That's the part that can be scary. It isn't working real well at the moment. Interest rates are too high.
I was just curious what you think the role of the federal government should be in regards to social issues. Just whatever you would define as social issues, right?
Would you define a social issue? Well, let me stop something and say this, because I had somebody ask me on a radio show recently. They asked me what I thought the federal government, as a congressman, what would I do to promote and to ensure small business growth in the 4th District. I said, well, that's a two-edged sword. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, first, I believe a congressman can be a great salesman. He can be a great worker. I said, he can help and get either tax benefits or credits. I said, but you've already told me you're a conservative. I said, so you're going to be kind of offended if I say I'm going to try to get money from Washington. I said, but on the other side, you're a voter, and you're going to be judging me also whether or not I can get money for my district. I said, so I'm sorry. I said, it's a hypocritical question. And he said, well, you know, and I said, but, I said, the federal government has a role federally. If you study some of the early, in fact, the whole thing about George Washington, you know, George Washington believed that we should have a strong federalized form of government because the states had so much contention with each other. Pennsylvania would not pay the Virginia military militia after this revolution. Virginia wouldn't pay North Carolina either. So they had constant battles out of how to pay, so that's why we have the federal government. But, you know, those powers that are not enumerated to the federal government should not be there. Most of the social issues, I believe, should be handled by the state. The problem is in our culture is it's all instant, and you can go to LA just as quick as you can, you know, Washington State, or you know, somewhere in Maine, 2-3 hours of a flight. Everything now is so much more centralized feeling. There is that lack of, you know, what I think I told John. I told my mom one time I thought that Sherman was smart in burning Atlanta militarily. My mom's from South Georgia. My mom was totally offended at me, ticked off. I mean, she was actually livid. She goes, I just can't believe you'd say something. I'm like, Mom, I'm talking military, talking objective, just, you know, scenarioing out. But 200 years ago, we were much more state rights driven. Unfortunately, the smallness of America now has somewhat eliminated that because you can actually, it actually makes people aggravated. Well, I can go to Georgia and do this. Well, I can go to North Carolina and do this. And I've heard people go, it should just be the same everywhere. Well, it shouldn't be the same everywhere under our system of government because our states have rights entitled to them not done. If it's not enumerated in the federal Constitution, U.S. Constitution, we should not be doing it. And I'm not saying that to pander. I agree with Paul Brown on that very much. You know, I live my life by 2 books. Just like Paul Brown says, it's his stump speech. I actually stealing it from him a little bit. He'll always say, I live my life by 2 books. The Bible. He actually always uses the phrase, the Holy Word of God. And the U.S. Constitution. We're going to live in our form of government. That's the 2 that you have to live by. For me. Maybe not the Bible for others, but you have to live by the U.S. Constitution. Those powers, those abilities not given to the states, to the federal government, those are withheld to the states. So, when it comes to social issues, I think most of those should be done by the state. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you, so how do you feel about the U.S. president in Afghanistan on these issues?
At this point, my God, get rid of them. I mean, we ought to leave. I mean, you know, I had the same conversation today at lunch. This is my being honest. The biggest problem I've always had with Ron Paul is foreign policy. Always will. I think you should carry a big stick, no question. I think, you know, this is where I start going more constitutional on some things. The president is the commander-in-chief. I think the War Powers Act is an encroachment on that executive level of authority. I also think that the executive level should not have the ability to just constantly go out and send troops wherever without congressional oversight, which my opinion, this is my opinion of the Constitution, Congress is the one that should have the highest level of authority, not the judiciary, not the executive branch, because the Congress is the elected representative of the people. It is the people that should have that power, not either one or the other. You know, I think when everything was going on in 2001, 2002, I was all for it in a sense. You know, because, you know, by God, let's go get the people who've done this. After 10 years, and Karzai being the way he is, and the other, I just think we just need to pull back and let them have what they want, do what they want to do. I don't think any American should be dying for them at all right now. I'm very loyal. It's one of my things. I said this last night, but it's true. I live my life by loyalty. The people that are loyal to me, I'm loyal to. I've got a number of guys right now, and I mean this. If I got a phone call and Jonathan said, you know, Dan called, I'd probably try to wrap up short and go take care of Dan. Loyalty means something. Disloyalty also means something. And if you're disloyal to the principles that we hold dear, if you're disloyal to the relationship that we have, especially if we're giving you foreign aid, you know, it just stops. And you're, you know.
So following on to that, what about some of the adventurism into countries like Libya, Syria, sending troops or drones over to those types of countries? What's your position or policy?
It's so crazy. I think it overreaches powers. He asked for like sending drones into Syria or military support.
Adventurism into those countries.
If the U.S. president is the commander-in-chief and he has the power to dictate that, regardless, there is a certain level where he has to have a free way to do that. Then it also has to come under congressional oversight to be able to pull back. The part that frustrates me now is for Congress to even want to pull that back. Right now, I don't think President Obama would pull back on anything. You know, I mean, I think it's funny, as much as Obama hated the war in Iraq, you know, he's a one-man killing drone machine right now. I mean, if you're a U.S. citizen in a foreign country, he can kill you. There's even thoughts about whether he can do it here. You know, it's hard to me. I mean, that's a really hard thing. And the reason I say that is I'm being honest. Let's just say we don't send the drone to him. And all of a sudden the suitcase bomb comes to New York through Syria. I guarantee almost everybody in here is going to sit back and go, well, you know, I felt comfortable with that. That's never going to happen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the double-edged sword. I think you got to carry a big stick and speak softly. I think we ought to defend our interest. I had a conversation with one guy one day, and he was talking. He said, "Well, the only reason we're in everywhere is oil. We just, you know, we need to quit being there for oil." I said, "I agree." I said, "But I think gas ought to be $12 a gallon. I think a gallon of milk ought to be $8 a gallon, and a loaf of bread $10 a gallon, $10 a loaf." And he said, "Why you say that?" I said, "Brother, I said everything in this world that we live in America, dwells off oil." I said, "That's just the way it is." We do have foreign interest over there, and you know, I think if we are going to do something on any major level, it should be a congressional declaration of war. If it's not, I think there will be some kind of limitation to it, and then we pull back. I mean, to me, those are hard cases because, again, for me, constitutionally, there are certain powers given to the executive, the commander-in-chief, to do. The other thing that, if you study the Constitution or history, we also know that it was never our, you know, I mean, it took the Barbary Coast War is what finally got us to having a standing army. You know, we had no standing army before that because we didn't want to have a standing army because we didn't want to have an army that could overturn the freedoms that we hold. So, you know, when you go back to constitutionally and the commander-in-chief having that authority, original intent of it was not that he would have the authority just to send troops all over the place. I don't think we're the nation's caretaker. I mean, the world's caretaker. I do think we're the greatest nation on God's earth. I think we've done more good on than any other nation that's ever been. Foreign aid, disaster assistance, whatever. I mean, we're it. We are the pinnacle, I think, of all liberty in this world at this point, or at least in the last 400 years that I can think of. I don't know, does that answer? Close enough?
Yeah, I mean, I have a follow-on question.
You mentioned foreign aid, but I was going to ask what you think of foreign aid, just in general, coming out of the government going to different nations around the world.
Well, you know, I don't like us giving foreign aid to people who are not loyal and people who are not supportive. If you're going to stab me in the back, I can go find people to do that. If that makes sense. I mean, I think it was Perry who talked about having foreign aid renewed or reviewed every year. Everybody starts with the base zero, and we estimate it and esteem it. Foreign aid is a very small part of the federal budget. I mean, that's one thing that's why it cracks me up with everybody. We need to get rid of foreign aid. We're just wasting money. You know, it's very small. I mean, entitlement reform is what you got to change in America. But you know, but to someone who is not loyal, you know, and the other side too is, I mean, that's the part that I've got a few friends who have enough political background to tell me not everything we hear in the news is actually what's sometimes taking place in the world. I mean, you know, it's like somebody looked at me one day and we were talking very much like, because they asked me about Iran, and they looked at me and they said, "I think we just need to talk to Iran." I said, "Brother," I said, "I'm 20 years older than you." I said, "We've been talking to Iran for 20 years. He goes, "No, we haven't." I said, "You honestly think we've not had some type of conversation with Iran?" "Oh, no, no." I said, "Well, then that just shows your youth." I said, "Because we used Pakistan with Kissinger to create the road of communication to China to open it up during Nixon." I said, "There's always conversation." I said, "But the bad thing is sometimes the conversation's not proven worthwhile. It hasn't created change." So I think foreign aid needs to be looked at and changed. I also think that we are the good Samaritan of the world. But you know, sometimes when you can't take care of your own children, I do have a pet peeve with church people sometimes. If you can't take care of your own children, and you're first called to take care of your family, then you're called to take care of other people. I mean, that's just the way I was raised. That's the good Samaritan call. But you should be taking care of those that are at home. Your follow-up.
So my follow-on is that you know, you started off and mentioned, you know, one of your big things is about economy, and so the question is how do you balance trying to cut the federal deficit with having a big stick militarily? I mean, the big things in the budget, you know, military budget is absolutely huge, but then entitlements and you know, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So, yeah, how do you go about cutting the massive deficit that is in our budget without addressing both of the issues of both our $700 billion military budget and the massive amount of time that's spending?
You have to cut both, but I do agree with Reagan on that. If I'm going to have to run a deficit, it's going to be because of the defense spending and making sure we have a strong national security. I've been held up once, gunpoint. 9 times out of 10, if I'm in public, I believe in the Second Amendment. I said that. I've done jobs where I've had to work in rough areas, and it's always good to carry the big stick and look like you're ready to go any moment. To me, for us to not have a strong national security defense, let me say that, is foolish. The other side too is third world countries, especially Muslim nations, they actually don't respect us right now because the only thing they respect is strength and force. And that's coming from people who have worked with heads of state from other countries, such as Pakistan, and that's their comment. We always respect strength. You got to have that. Defense spending right now is what, 24, 26, 27%? Entitlement's much more. So the issue is not as much defense spending. I'm on the other, this is probably where I'm not going to be the conservative libertarian everybody would like, or the conservative Republican. I shouldn't say Republican. I wish NASA had some long-range vision. My iPhone is a product of the ingenuity of NASA. And I remember watching the last shuttle take off. I remember watching the last shuttle land, and it totally frustrated the snot out of me. And I went to my computer, I pulled up Wikipedia. I went from the very first launch, and I kept looking. And I went all the way to, I flipped and kind of just generically went to the very last shuttle launch. You know what we have planned after the shuttle launch? Nothing. There's no future vision. What's funny is if you look at the federal budget as to what was spent for NASA and certain things such as that, to me there are strategic value to it. But you're going to have to start having that conversation, and we're going to have to cut entitlements. That's just, by and large, all it is. I made a comment because I've endorsed the 999 plan. I've done it because I like the flat tax. Flat tax that have traction, and that's just my opinion right now. In a room, when you say flat tax, people just look at you. 999, everybody's heard of that. At least it's a change, I think, in at least some right direction. But I have friends who are senior citizens who are mad at me now that I've endorsed that because all of a sudden some of their retirement income, they may have to pay taxes when they go buy something at a 9% national sales tax. Somebody's going to have to make changes somewhere. Somebody's got to pull their belt in somehow. I said this to John, and I mean this in my 20s. I don't say this to be sad. One of my younger daughters hates me telling these stories. In my 20s, just like anybody, when you got young kids and you're trying to stake your living and grow and prosper, money's tight. And it's always funny to me, money's a complete paradox. When you're young and you need it, you don't have it. When you get older and you don't need it as much, you got tons of it, which is why my father at 80 is not the man I remember because he walks around to my kids and passes out 50s and 20s, and I'm like, who the heck are you? I never had this. But I remember going to a McDonald's drive-thru. This is a true story, I'm not making this up. I got Sarah Beth a Happy Meal, I got Molly a Happy Meal, and I got me a glass of water. That's all the money I had. And I made sure they ate, I made sure they were taken care of, I drove home hungry. And what little few fries that they didn't eat, I ate. That's the part that we've got to have that conversation. And I think in some ways we need to guilt trip America. We're guilt tripped enough to want to have to pay for everybody's living. I think we need to guilt trip them enough to make sure we provide for our children and grandchildren. But you're going to have to cut entitlements much more than you cut military. And anybody, and I will just be honest, anybody who tells me that we should cut military to the point that we are ineffective, because I remember being 9th grade in 79 and 80. I remember going through the Iran hostage crisis. I remember the state of affairs, and I knew military people who knew that the Navy boats that we had at that time could not go out to sea due to the fact that they were inefficient and they were not repaired. I would not vote for that. I would always vote to have a strong national defense and unapologetic.
Just a question regarding just your last comment about the military and spending. It's honestly something that I don't understand because I know a lot of people much more educated than I am have said, well, if we cut the military budget or defense spending, that it will cause significant problems. Looking at the raw numbers, though, I think we spend about 10 times more, like in total dollars, than I think, China, who's our next closest military expenditure, and approximately about double the rest of the world put together, or at least as much as the rest of the world put together on military spending. And I'm wondering if you think, like, why that could be, and then us still having a security risk. Do you think that we just have an inefficient budgeting or procurement process, or do you think, like, because I mean, the idea of us spending more than everyone else, it seems like something's wrong if our effect isn't enough to counterbalance the world.
I won't address the numbers because I don't know. I also don't know if it's a number or a percentage of numbers of population. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand. I don't know the numbers, so I won't speak to the numbers. I don't think we need to spend more than everybody else. I just think we need to make sure we just have a strong national defense that can handle this, if that makes sense. And anybody who thinks China is not wanting to take over as a superpower, I think they're just being naive. Or India at this point. I mean, they have the same thing. Or some of the other, Russia at this point. I mean, that's the other side that I think is so funny for me. I mean, I grew up with a stop, drop, and roll. I grew up with, watching nuclear big bomb. I looked at my daughter one day and I said something, and I said, oh, that was the Cold War. She's 18 years old. She goes, what is that? I said, the Cold War? I said, you didn't study this? You don't know about this? I said, where we're mutually assured destruction? I said, she goes, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And her whole life, she's never, ever, when I was in elementary, constantly considered that conversation. And I personally believe Russia is trying to resurrect some of that. But I don't think we need to spend more. I think we just need to spend what we need. But I also think, kind of like with the whole GSA thing right now, I don't think we need to be wasteful either. There's some bases you can close, which everybody hates that in Georgia. We've closed a lot of bases in Georgia. It's affected a lot of Georgians. Everybody's always in favor for it as long as it's there. As long as it's not here. But you've always got to spend money on some of that. But you got to make sure you do it, I think, frugally and with oversight. So I hope that answers. And y'all have the best questions.
Wasteful speed.
It is.
That's the problem. And like our equipment, a lot of our military, the reason ours just costs so much more, our equipment is better. A lot of our planes cost more, our aircraft carriers cost more, because they're better than one of them. But a lot of the spending is wasted. That's the big thing, is the waste.
But I don't want to be like England. That's one of the saddest things in my life. One of my favorite political people is Churchill. Churchill, in his birth, was Queen Victoria. Only world superpower in existence because of the Navy. By World War I, they're no longer a superpower. By World War II, they're definitely not a superpower. Never have been since. They farm out their Navy now. What was considered one time the ruling, people wonder why, part of it's because of the two world wars on their home turf through the destruction and death. But I don't want to become that nation. I truly don't. But my opinion is, I really don't believe military spending is what has messed us up so much. It is trying to make sure that we socially take care of everybody to the point that there's no responsibility. I have a great, I think personally, everybody in here should work on straight commission. That's just the way I was brought up. I've been self-employed. When you have straight commission, you're hungry. You're going to make a sale. You're going to do what it takes. You can sit and not do squat and get the check. 9 times out of 10 sit and don't do as much as you could have. I know that's pretty severe to people. But just because I've worked hard, it's not my job to make sure I take care of everybody else. My goal in life is not to try to fix everybody. It is trying to fix the people that I come in contact with that I can't help. But that's my choice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you also for being here this evening, Mr. Vaughn. Really do appreciate it. Good luck on the race. My question is, when you actually are elected and in office, what do you think would be your first bill? If your defining bill when you get there, that you'd like to sponsor?
I'm going to be honest, I have no idea. I have no idea for one reason. I know this. As a freshman congressman, you're on a few of committees, you're not in a seat. This is one point where it totally frustrates me with Tea Party people. Because they voted all these people in to be the Tea Party activists. They're freshman congressmen. And I do agree with term limits, totally. Only because there's not enough honorable men. I don't agree with term limits, to be quite honest, because we have a system where you can vote someone out. But that was written under a time when people were honorable. They would serve 2, 3, 4 terms in 1780, 1820. Then they would go back and farm and do whatever. We don't have that. We have Kucinich, who's possibly going to move to another state so that he can continue to be a congressman after 6 years, I think. That's crazy. I don't know what it would be. I would want it to be, actually, if I could, more symbolic for spending, for cuts, for the repeal of Obamacare, and hopefully for the replacement of something. I mean, it would be on that level. I'm not real sure how far it would go, if that makes sense, because that's the nature of politics. It is sometimes it does have a lot to do with tenure and your ability to coalesce support around that, whether or not you can get enough co-sponsors, whether or not you can get enough senators to sign off on it on the other side of the house. So it would be within spending, much more so than anything else, spending and the economy. Hopefully getting a budget passed. Now, I used this last night talking. This is something a lot of people don't know. A federal budget is for 10 years. That's why when they talk about savings, they'll always say, over 10 years. Because that federal budget is in effect for 10 years. Which is why the Democrats right now do not want a new budget, because since 2009, spending levels are held at that level. And we all know that the 2009 budget was an extremely high-level watermark of spending to, quote, save the economy. Well, that's why it's still at such a high-level watermark, because we've not altered any budgetary level, and we have to do continuing resolutions. I personally would not want to vote for a continuing resolution. And that freaks people out, because then what about, retirement, state parks, and Medicare, and everybody else? I mean, those are hard choices. But my first bill somewhere would be to limit federal spending. Maybe just complete symbolism and the elimination of the Fed, if that makes sense, or something, and hopefully to get traction so that you can keep that argument going. Because hopefully that argument does not stop, and that discussion does not stop.
How would you cut entitlements? How would you reform entitlements? How do you see it?
My opinion, just my opinion. I think you're going to have to do it in some slow progression. We were talking earlier, I think there's 1.8 million right now in Georgia who are getting federal unemployment. This is going to sound fake. That really does not bother me on some level, because some of those workers have paid into the system through unemployment insurance and whatever FICA. There is some due, if that makes sense. I mean, they have invested. 3 years of unemployment, I think, went too long. The problem is, if you cut it off right now, every gas station in the majority of Atlanta area would be affected. Every mom and pop store would be affected. All your grocery stores would be affected. All those families would be affected. You're going to have to pull that drug off quick. If not, you're going to have a meth addict who just went cold turkey. But that's the part to like this, and that goes back to the question of how you do it. You have to stay engaged and fight, because it's not right. It's not right for me to destroy my children's future. And to continue to spend entitlement is what that is. It is the complete destruction of a future generation. Now, I don't think in some ways we owe our futures, our children, everything that we have. I think they need to work for it and earn it so that they appreciate it and enjoy it. But you're going to have to do it over a slow process. But to me, you need to go back to the spending levels, I would say, of 2006. If you went back to spending levels of 2006 alone, that would make a huge impact, because you would lessen the federal spending of what we're doing right now. So, but that's going to be that's going to be something it's going to be, at this point right now, President Obama is trying to give basically free federal loans, forgive the federal loans to a college student. Most of us, I guess, would probably disagree with that, unless you have a student loan that you need to have forgiven. As long as you got your hand in the till, you always have a little bit different perspective. And that's the hard part. It's going to have to be incremental, because you've got so many people who believe and assume that they have a right to your money. And that's the part where you got to re-educate. So I'd say go back to spending levels of 04, 06, 02, 2000.
I thought this would be a decent segue to go into Social Security, and what you think about the idea of allowing younger people to opt out of the Social Security.
Oh, I'd vote for that tomorrow morning. I've never in my life, I'm 46, I've never in my life assumed I'd have Social Security.
Sorry to keep asking.
Oh,
I was asking what you thought about Social Security and allowing younger people to opt out of Social Security.
I would vote for it tomorrow. I think the people who are, you're going to take heat no matter what arbitrary age you pick. So you're going to have to pick somewhere that you serve the most people, 55, 58, 60, whatever. If they want to stay in, stay in. I think you have to honor that commitment. And there's a certain bit of, that's going to be an expensive one because baby boomers are all hitting retirement. I think the last thing I heard was about 10,000 a day are hitting retirement age. That's a lot of people who are going to be receiving Social Security that I and my children have to pay for. But I think you ought to be able to opt out. I think you're a much better steward of your money than the federal government would be, or I would be. Because when it's my money, I know exactly how much money I have. And I think it would be better.
Any questions? Yeah. Oh, you know, running here in the 4th presents its own unique challenges. Obviously, with the redistricting that changes things. What do you know? How do we? How does the Republican Party diversify itself? You know, clearly you're running the 4th district, are going to have to go out and talk to a lot of different groups. What kind of message, what kind of values do you want to represent to all those divergent groups to try to increase the size of the tent of the Republican Party and bring people in? What kind of ideas do you think, as a Republican candidate running for Congress, do you think are going to attract all of the different groups to give yourself even a chance to run against the Hnak Johnson, for example?
Yeah, liberty. Republican Party's done more to fight for liberty than any other party around. That's just case closed, bar none, solid truth. Going all the way back to Stephen Douglas and the foundation of the Republican Party. That's not given much. That's not spoken enough. It's sometimes, no offense, not spoken enough even in this setting. Because you have people who do not like, if you will, the state of the Republican Party today because they feel pushed out or disillusioned. But you have to fight for that value. The Republican Party is the one who fought for civil rights, fought for the Voting Rights Act, vote for, oh my gosh, it's the Republican Party who's pushed that on. You know, and that just has to be spoken. And spoken of unapologetically. I mean, I grew up as a Democrat when I was a kid. South Georgia, he was a Democrat. My God, that's Jeff Davis County. That was a Democrat county. But that party left him. You know, I love that line from Reagan. I didn't leave, they left me. But you're going to have to approach it from that. It is the party of choice. It is the party of liberty. It's the party that believes you have the right to choose certain aspirations for your own life and dreams. And the bad thing for that is, and if you choose badly and you choose badly and do badly, the other side of that great choice of liberty is you have the choice to go through that pain and agony and learn from it. And not expect me to pay for it for that. The other party doesn't give you that much option. And it is that option. It is that choice of liberty. I don't know if that helps that answer.
I guess as a follow-up, you know, what about from the standpoint of the younger generations and the young people? You know, I certainly, I think there's some sense, and you know, you can see it from some of the official affairs, the conventions and whatnot. You know, the demographic of the Republican Party tends to kind of lean a little older. What kind of, how do you go out and reach, regardless of the groups, as far as the young people, as far as that is a group in and of itself, how do you, as Chris Vaughn, want to go out and communicate your values to the younger people who have the energy and the passion and the enthusiasm?
To me, I don't want to be there's a lady in my church, and she always looked at me and she'll always go, I'm young at heart. And one day I looked at her and I said, no, you're not. She goes, oh, I am. I belong with the 20-year-olds. I said, no, you don't. She goes, oh, I do. I said, honey, you're 64 years old. I said, you haven't been young in a long time. I still think I'm young at heart. To me, you just have to stay at it and be engaged. There's something to be said for the man who demands a space at the table. There's something said to be man for the man who will wait at the side of the table until he gets his space. But that gets into the choice and the fight for liberty. And not being so self-serving that you do not fight the fight patiently. You know, I remember being 22, 23. Only thing in life I've never been afraid to do is speak publicly. And I mean that. It never has bothered me one day. And I think I was good in my 20s. But I didn't deserve the right, if that makes sense. I hadn't paid the price to do it. I hadn't done 1,000 speeches. I have not done 1,000 sermons. I used to do comedy. I have not done 1,000 comedy sets. You know, there comes that involvement. There comes that, if you will, I think somewhat a little bit of humility. And the greatest thing anyone can do to endear themselves to another person is to show some level of humility. Not of ownership of duty, but of humility to the cause. And that is one of the greatest attributes that can be had. The other side to that is loyalty. And I think, in my opinion, I personally do see there's a shift politically. I think in the Democrats and Republicans. And I think people who are 30, let's say 28 and younger, 30 younger maybe, I think they're a little more disillusioned. I think some of that comes because all of a sudden now they're out of college, they have debt, they have bills, and they got to start paying for it. And so all of a sudden the reality of life is woken them up. But you've got to constantly engage them on that. I sometimes don't think an 18-year-old person should even be allowed to vote. And that's not said because I'm against 18-year-old voting. I just sometimes don't think they have enough life experiences to appreciate the value and the honor and the ability and the prestige that being able to go and vote elicits. That conversation needs to begin. But if a young person wants to have liberty and wants to have choice, and wants to have opportunity, and not be dictated as to federal involvement in just their life and their choices, I think that's the Republican Party. Until something else comes along better. But I haven't seen nothing better in my life at this point. But you have to stay engaged. And you have to have that conversation. I always loved doing this. I did this back in the 90s. I went to an event and I had $1 bill on my pocket. This is age was really big. Age awareness. Everybody had a red ribbon. Everywhere you went, red ribbon, red ribbon. If you were compassionate, red ribbon. So I wore a $1 bill. And I had somebody come up to me and they said, "What's that for?" I said, "That's the extinction of my wealth." I said, "I'm wearing this to honor all the dollars that are being taken from me." And I just did it to be kind of a smart aleck. And I had all these people all of a sudden pulling dollar bills out and putting pins and they're wearing them around. And I just did it to make that point. But until you have some investment, until you get involved, you don't appreciate sport. And that's me being 46. And my daughter looked at me one day and she said, "Why should I be involved?" She's 18. And I said, "Because," I said, "you're required to." I said, "I don't want any lip, I don't want any frustration." I said, "You're required to be involved." "Well, I've got this, I've got that." I said, "No." I said, "You're an American." I said, "That's your involvement. You got to be." I said, "You have to pay that price." I said, "There's a duty and a requirement to keep liberty." So then I looked around and I said, "So shut up, learn what you need to learn, and do what you need to do, and make sure you vote." And my 21-year-old has. But you have to have that level of engagement. You have to constantly speak. Because some people don't. And some people want something for free. That's the honest truth. Last night, at the event in Newton, they had food. Largest event I've ever been to in Newton County GOP. Now, it wasn't free food. If you want free food, you can come May 1st to my fundraiser in Rockdale at Glenn's Barbecue. We have free breakfast, 7 to 9. But there is that level of responsibility. As long as everybody thinks something's for free, sometimes they show up. They never appreciate it. Not until they pay for it.
Well, thank you for coming, Chris. It's
I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to go to my website, it's chrisvaughn.net. Hopefully it'll be changed in about a week. We have handouts. We do have a fundraiser May 1st. If you want to come, hang out, you can have free breakfast. That's being sponsored by one of our supporters. So it is a fundraiser. So I will ask you for money. I will ask you for your vote. I do ask it for the July 31st and November 6th. And I ask you to do this. Believe in change and believe that you can hope that the 4th can flip. And the 4th can change. It can in 2012. It really can in 2012. Everything's lining up for 2012 to be a great year. And fight for it. And always fight for it. Thank you.
all right, everyone. Next meeting is going to be, there's going to be a happy hour on May 16th. That's a Wednesday in the 57th Fighter Group. It's going to be from 6 to 8. Another candidate for the 4th will be attending that and speaking. The next meeting will be on May 22nd. That's the following Tuesday here. Between those two, I think there's the state GOP convention in Columbus. Additionally, there'll be the state YR convention in Columbus around the same time. Our club will get to send a number of delegates. I think it'll probably be 2 delegates to that convention, 3 delegates to that convention, and 3 alternates. If anyone is a member and dues paid and all that, that's something that people may want to be involved in, let me know. We're going to need to decide that before the convention. I'll be sending out the email list, which you all should be part of. If you aren't, you need to make sure to see me, turn a membership form. We can discuss that on there, but it's a great thing to be involved in. Also, we need committee chairs. Events, social, finance, membership. If people would like to take a leadership role in this group and try to help grow it, try to help plan the events, get the happy hours rolling, you'll have a lot of discretion, a lot of ability to do what you want, and a lot of help. I'll gladly help out right now. I've been doing a lot, David's been doing a lot, Mel's been doing a lot. Anyone who wants to help, please let me know. And thank you all for coming. Feel free to stay and chat and have some good food and keep it up.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.